Alright, Doug's garage. I was told I have to make some videos, some vocational videos, of me working on stuff. But I figured before we start working on anything, we're going to start with a small video on just basic hand tools. I take for granted a lot of times knowing all the tools myself. Sometimes, working with some friends that don't work on stuff, tell them, can you grab me a Phillips head screwdriver, and they come back with a wrench. So I figured if I'm going to teach you guys how to work on things through a video, it'd be good if you knew exactly what I was using to remove stuff or work on stuff or whatever. So let's start with some basic tools. I got a few things laid out on top of my toolbox here. I'm going to turn the camera around and if I can figure out how to do that. Maybe you can't do it once I already started. Alright, I'm going to have to pause this and we're going to have to edit it in. Alright, we're back. You don't have to look at my ugly face anymore. We're going to start with screwdrivers. So, this one here is a Phillips head screwdriver. Let me get it into focus. Phillips head. Here's the Phillips head fastener. Easily identifiable by the 4 points. Then we have a flathead, which is pretty easy to identify because it's a flathead. You can see it goes right there with a flathead. And then we have a Torx screwdriver. Torxes come in many different sizes. It's not my expertise is filming, but it's got 6 sides to it. And you can see a Torx fastener right there in the background. So those are your basic screwdrivers. And of course, screwdrivers also come in many different lengths and sizes, especially with Phillips heads. They usually make 3 different sizes. This is a number 2 Phillips head. You can see on the side here it tells you number 2. A number 3 would obviously be a bigger head. That's actually a number 3 fastener right there itself. So a number 2 will work in it, but not the best. And then moving on, we're going to move on to ratchets. We have 3 basic ratchet sizes, being the anvil size, which you have 1/4 inch right here. You have 3/8. 3/8 is kind of the do-all. It usually covers a little bit of 1/4 inch size stuff and a little bit of 1/2 inch size stuff and everything in the middle. And you get a 1/2 inch. The sockets, so we get sockets here. This is a 1/4 inch one. 1/4 inch sockets only fit on 1/4 inch ratchets. You have a 3/8, and obviously same thing. 3/8 only fit on a 3/8 ratchet, and same with 1/2 inch. We can go over sockets. There's different types of sockets. This is what we consider a deep socket. This is what we consider a shallow socket. You can tell the difference right there. You have basically a long socket and a short socket. We have universal sockets. This is a 1/4 inch universal socket. So if you had to get into a tight spot and you wanted to have the ratchet basically, this is not very easy with one hand. Put this on here. Bear with me. Most ratchets usually stand, when you have a standard socket like the one on the 3/8, you're going to have it straight up and down. This would allow you to be able to turn it and be able to work on something on an angle. This ratchet here, this 1/4 inch, and this 1/2 inch ratchet are what you consider a fixed head ratchet. This 3/8 one is a flex head, so you kind of get a straight socket with maybe an ability to work on something on an angle. You can flex it either way, kind of like the universal socket here. And then with sockets you also have extensions. So you have different length extensions. If you need to reach into somewhere you couldn't get the ratchet in, the bolt was further down. And let me grab this off of here. You have a regular extension here where it's just straight and the socket will go on and it's fixed and doesn't move. And then with this one here, we call these wobble extensions. So the socket can wobble around a little bit. And get a further back view of that. It's just not straight on, so if you had a tight area you needed to get into, over here. This is another type of universal socket. This one rotates around. This is what this will be used on an impact gun since it's black. Which is another side note. Anything that's chrome, like all these chrome sockets here, like this one here, the one on there, those are designed to be only used on a hand ratchet, something you're going to use by hand. Anything that's black, like this, or like this extension, is designed to be used on an impact gun. We're going to go over impact guns in a minute. This is what we consider a breaker bar. On the end here, it's fixed. It doesn't ratchet like a ratchet, which I should probably show you how that works. I mean, you have a ratchet here with a socket, and basically the socket ratchets around so you can swing the ratchet back and forth when you're taking off a bolt. The breaker bar is designed that you put it on, and they're usually a lot longer than a ratchet. Like, I mean, you put into perspective, they're a lot longer, so you can get a lot more leverage and break the bolt free, and then you go on to using, you know, a hand ratchet after it's free. So that's ratchets. Let's go over some of the sockets and the different fasteners. So right here we have what we consider a 6-point socket. You can see there's 6 points to it, six separate points. A 6-point works on a 6-point fastener. It's your basic standard fastener. As you can see, it fits in there perfect. And then we have, these are a little more old school. This is what we consider a 12-point socket. Some modern cars still, some certain big bolts usually are 12-point. A lot of heavy equipment are 12-point. Move over here. This is what a 12-point looks like. These are usually used on hot rods nowadays, on parts of the motor where you see it is exposed. But there's your 12-point socket, 12-point fastener. You can use a 12-point socket on a 6-point fastener, but the chances of rounding out the fastener are a lot greater. If you were in a pinch and you needed to get a 6-point off and all you had was a 12-point, you could do it. It's not the best scenario. It's definitely something you'd only want to use by hand. And we have an Allen style fastener. And a lot of people remember what an Allen wrench is. Maybe or maybe not. Your typical Allen wrench. They also make Allen sockets you can put on a ratchet. Very popular. And then just like the Torx screwdriver, they also make Torx sockets, which I forgot to go over a Torx screwdriver. There's your Torx screwdriver, and we already go over that. So that's your basic screwdrivers and ratchets and sockets. And then back here, every mechanic that lives in New England will recognize these tools. You have your hammers. This is what we consider a dead flow hammer. Inside of the hammer there's actually a hollow, and there's a bunch of lead shot, like little red lead BBs. That basically, when you swing this hammer and it comes in contact with stuff, the lead shot is what keeps the hammer from bouncing back. Very useful when you're working in a tight area and you don't want to have the hammer bouncing back off of a hard metal surface and hitting something else. This is your regular standard hammer. Both hammers, by the way, are ball peen hammers. This is the ball peen on the end and just a regular flat surface on the other end. pry bar. If you need to pry something. The flathead screwdriver is a flathead screwdriver. It is not a pry bar. In fact, no, this one, yep, they even show you a little picture. Snap-on loves to show the picture there that is informing you that it's not a pry bar, but everyone uses those as pry bars. You get a couple punch here and a chisel. Punches and chisels are great for working on wonderful stuff in New England that's always rusted. Sometimes you have to use a hammer and bang something out. In the background there, this piece right here is my favorite tool of all tools. It's called an air hammer. So basically inside of here, the air, this works off of air, an air compressor. There's a big metal cylinder that bounces back and forth, and this is the attachment. You know, this is a chisel. They make all different types of attachments for these, and it bounces this back and forth and it does the hammering action for you. It works great for getting anything that's rusted onto something off. So moving on from that, we're going to go on to pliers. These are your, let's just say, your 4 basic pliers. You have a pair of regular pliers. These are slip joint style ones, so you can open them up more. They get onto bigger fasteners. Can be used for multiple things. These would be your needle nose pliers because they come to a point. That's why they get their name, needle nose. These are side cutters. These are great for cutting like zip ties, cutting, you know, you can even cut through old rusted brake lines with these. They get used quite a bit. These are considered channel lock pliers. See if you notice there's a channel there, and that's what basically you can adjust them, and that's what locks the channel. It locks in the channel and makes it a different size plier on the end. And then we have a pair of vice grips, which are great for bolts that are rusted, just like you keep mentioning rust, everything in New England rust. So you can adjust on the end here. You can close up the end, and basically when you clamp these down, they leverage into place, and they won't. You can let go of the pliers, and they won't come off of whatever you're trying to get on. And they usually have pretty aggressive teeth on the end. These are a little worn out. That will bite into the metal, help you get it off. This part here is what releases them off of the whatever you have them on. So your basic set of pliers there that every toolbox would have. And let's go on to wrenches. There's a lot of different wrenches out there. This is a ratcheting wrench. So on the end here, you can see you can switch this back and forth. This ratchets kind of like a regular ratchet, but this is obviously a fixed size. So this is a 14 millimeter. And there's an open end on the end there. Then you have a regular, this is a miniature ratchet, a miniature wrench, I'm sorry. Just a small version for a tight spot, but this is obviously fixed, doesn't ratchet on the end. An offset wrench. These are great if you had to get somewhere and you wanted to fit your hand in there, and say the bolt head was here and whatever it was extended out, so you could get an offset. This is a lines, drawing a blank. Basically, this is meant for brake lines and anything to do with brake lines. So on the end there, it's cut open, so you could fit this over a brake line and get basically like almost a true 6 points of contact. That works great for that kind of stuff. Somewhere where you can't get the closed end of a wrench on something, or you can't get a socket on, which is, I wish I had a brake line here to show you, but typically if you could picture the metal part here as a brake line would go all the way up and through the middle of a bolt. So you can't obviously get a socket on it. So you'd use a line wrench that you can get around the line. You can put that part over the line, and then you can get on the fastener. And then the typical adjustable wrench. So let's see, moving on. From here we have impact guns. This one here is a 1/2-inch gun. This is a 3/8 gun. Both of these guns are air guns. They work off an air compressor. An impact socket. As you noticed before, we talked about anything that's black is usually impact graded. Usually has a thicker wall. It's made out of a different type of metal that won't shatter when it's working. The way these work is the air goes in, and in the back here there's like kind of like a vein part that the air, blows around on, that spins a big cylinder in here. And inside the cylinder, this anvil's hooked up to it. There is little hammers that basically open up as it spins around and bangs off of a wall, which in return, that force is transferred to the anvil, which would break something free. This is an electric version of one. And then we have, I guess last here on the list is a electric ratchet. They make these in air. I don't have an air one. This is an electric one in 3/8, which is just basically a electric powered version of a hand ratchet. Other than that, a couple basic things. Gloves. You got rubber gloves, the green ones. Some cloth ones, safety glasses. Those are, usually pretty important, especially when you're swinging a hammer around. You want to have eye protection. And I guess that's really it. Other than that, the only thing to really mention, I think I have it out here. This says 1/4 inch on it. It happens to be a 1/4 inch drive, but it's a 1/4 inch diameter socket for 1/4 inch bolts. And on this one, we have a 13 millimeter. It doesn't say millimeter, but it's a 13 millimeter. So, America, just like our measuring system, is different. So this is what we call a standard socket, being 1/4 inch. So, and then we have 13 millimeter, which would be like a, UK version. Pretty much everything nowadays made since like 1996 on in America with cars is all metric. We don't use standard stuff anymore on American cars, believe it or not. Mainly because all automotive nowadays, they all share parts. So they standardized it and they just use the metric system. But sockets, wrenches, I think these are all metric, yeah. But sockets, wrenches all come in standard form and metric form. A side note, the Torx fasteners, these only come in one size, which would be metric, because that is a European type deal thing. Allen keys, Allens, they come in metric and standard. This, I believe, is, yes, it's standard. I mean, not standard, metric. It's 8 millimeter. But other than that, that's pretty much it for hand tools. Get a good view of everything one more time. Pretty much, if you had this stuff, you could do a lot of work on a lot of cars. There's obviously in this toolbox a lot of specialized stuff for specific things. I guess I could show you one thing, like this wrench here. This is meant for just oxygen sensors. I mean, it's a specialty thing. This here, with this piece in the back here, is meant to take off serpentine belts. Just a few things that are specialty tools. But what sits on top of this toolbox, now obviously with sockets, there's a complete set. I only took a couple out here, but for the most part, what sits on here is pretty much all you would need to work on a lot of stuff on your own car or your lawnmower, whatever, anything you would plan on working on. But I guess that will be, we're almost coming up on 20 minutes here. Time does fly. That would be the first video, basic tools. I hope all you guys are having fun at home. I hope maybe some videos like this will be a little bit funner than just reading books and stuff. I have a few projects lined up, and maybe those guys will see me in the future doing a few things in my garage. All right, have a good one.